Hello everyone, welcome to Cellopedia, this is Maxim. Today we will continue working on the 7th position, but this time we will learn a few exercises which will help us to go from the 1st all the way to the 7th position. So we will make different shifts to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th positions and so on. So you will finally feel connection between this position and the lower ones. We will study the exercise number 215 from Dotzauer-Klingenberg Cello School, Volume 3. If you need a free copy of this music to work with, please follow the link in the description. The first two measures of this exercise give us a chance to master shifts from the 1st to the 3rd to the 5th and then ultimately to 7th position. I think it would be great to play it just one note per bow in tempo 8th note 60. Let's do it. I believe it's very important to anticipate the position of the thumb in the 7th position. This way, I actually moved it up this way while I was playing in the 5th position. So when I started playing F sharp with the first finger, I moved my thumb here. So after that, the only thing I had to do is to make this slide to the 7th position. And then on the way down, after you're done with the A and moving back to the 5th position, you have to move the thumb right away. So here you don't have to prepare it in advance. But again, on the way up, it's a very good idea to anticipate this shift. Otherwise, you might feel you got stuck and your shift to the 7th position will never be as smooth as you would like it to be. And of course, after you played those two measures number of times, you can start playing connecting the notes. We can do it 4 notes per bow, playing 2 times faster, the quarter note 60. You probably noticed that I started to prepare a thumb even earlier. So it always depends on tempo and music you have to play. You can choose when you actually start moving it up. But the rule of thumb, well, literally in this case, is that you better do it earlier than later. And when you are ready to play with bowing, suggested here, 8 notes per bow, you might want to play it even 2 times faster. This way, the half note will be 60, and we will play 8 notes per bow. The next part of the exercise, when you have to play 16th notes, is probably the most useful, because now you will play in all positions between the 1st and the 7th position. And you shouldn't be confused with 16th notes. It does not mean that you have to play it very fast. So let's try to do it one note per bow, and we'll take tempo 8th note 60. Just 2/16 notes per beat. Obviously, this exercise doesn't have an interesting melody to enjoy, but it serves as a very important drill. So you can play it a number of times until you notice that you don't have to think that much about every shift. And once you start feeling this way, that means you spent enough time working on it. And the next step for this part of exercise, I would suggest to play 4 notes per bow with a quarter note 60. So you start working on legato, yet you will have a bow change right before every shift. It will help you to make each shift more clear. And at some point, you might want to try it the way it's written, 12 notes per bow. I will be using the tempo a quarter note 104. The next 4 measures, 8th notes, feel actually a bit easier than previous measures of 16th notes. So maybe we can try it right away to play the way it's written. But don't hesitate learning it first 1 note per bow in any tempo which you will find helpful. And now I will show you the final result. I will play in tempo quarter note 60. For the right hand, it might actually be easier if you play it faster than that. Once you start playing this way, make sure that you pay attention to the bow distribution, because you might spend too much bow for first 4 notes, and then you will feel that you just don't have enough bow for the rest of the slur. Maybe as preparatory exercise you might want to play 4 notes per bow. But then, once you try 8 notes per bow, try to use as slow bow speed as possible for first few notes. This way you will have much more bow to play the rest of the slur. And overall it will sound much better, much more relaxed. We shouldn't forget to talk about shifts, because every shift has to have a little bit of a slide in it. Of course, you know that when you are making a shift, you keep pressing with the finger on the string. And that's perfectly fine if we can hear a slide between notes. The question is how much of that you want. But you can do it much more when you're just learning to play a new shift. So you always hear what's going on between one note and another. And last 2 measures of this exercise give us perfect chance to work on that. In the first measure of it, we will work on a shift from the 1st to the 7th position. This is a very long shift, and you don't want to look at the fingerboard much when you work on it, and especially when you play it. So the best way, although might not be the quickest one, is to play with the slide and just hear when your finger will start approaching the final destination, and then slow down it and gracefully arrive at the note. This might not be the speed you will start working on this shift. Most likely we need much slower speed with more clear glissando, slide between notes. It might work like this. This is somewhat a secret about the technique to develop those long shifts, because we don't hear it when we listen to a good cellist to perform. But when you're practicing, you need to practice this way too. And of course, after you gain some confidence, then you try to make this shift faster, so you don't make this slide to be that obvious. And you should work in a similar way when you make a shift from the 4th position to the 7th position, the last measure of this exercise. This is a bit easier shift, being a shorter one compared to the previous shift, but you have to use the same technique. First, make sure that you hear the slide very well, and then you might want to hide it to some extent. And then finally, with shift almost hidden. Of course, you will also need to pay attention to what is happening with your thumb and actually with the wrist. Make sure that your wrist is not in much of the contact with the body of the cello. So when you're making a shift, you don't hit the cello with your wrist. You can hear this to happen when many students play just starting. You might hear it in some of the student performances, and this is something you want to avoid. So from the starting point, when you just start learning those shifts, make sure that you get used to do it this way. You are gracefully sliding up and you're lifting your elbow and your wrist so it doesn't touch this edge of the cello. I hope you enjoyed working on this exercise. Please come back. We will continue making our way through cello technique with Dotzauer-Klingenberg Cello Method.